It is hot, huh?
I was told we had 2 videos. Are we starting with the 2 videos? Yes? Okay, no, we're not. Hi, I'm Julie Borlaug, and I'm honored to be here today. And I'm so glad we have a room that's pretty full, considering this is the end of the conference, or right before the big party. But this is a really exciting panel for me to moderate, and it's because somehow each one of these organizations have been a part of my grandfather's legacy. So the World Bank, thank you for funding the CGIAR, and East and West Seeds. Micah's grandfather won the World Food Prize, so you're carrying on your father's legacy. And then we have Evelyn from AGRA, and AGRA was Alliance for a Green Revolution. And then we have the Gates Foundation, and we have Trey, who was a wonderful funder of Global Rust Initiative. So I want to thank all of you for being here today. I'm going to start with just really brief introductions. So Aman, can you give us a brief introduction?
Thank you very much, Julie. And good afternoon to everyone. I hope you find yourself relaxing in Lisbon. My name is Aman Al-Amzai. I work as senior agriculture economist for the World Bank. I'm based in Washington, D.C. I work in the field assignments, but part of a global agenda in agribusiness. You know that the bank, or the World Bank Group, has private sector, public sector dimensions. We work with governments, we work with private sector on different farming and food systems and different segments of the value chain. So seed sector has been a significantly important area of focus and investment for us across our client country. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Micah?
Thank you, Julie. Hello, everyone. My name is Maaike Groot, and I represent East West Seed and East West Seed Knowledge Transfer Foundation. We are a vegetable seeds company founded, as you said, by my father, Simon Groot, almost 45 years ago, who was on a mission to bring better vegetable seed varieties to Southeast Asia, which eventually moved into Africa and Latin America too. We also work in a knowledge transfer foundation to train farmers in sustainable vegetable cultivation, because we know that seeds alone cannot do the job.
Evelyn?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Evelyn Lusenaka. I work for AGRA in Nairobi, Kenya. I'm the director for the Center of Excellence for Seed Systems in Africa. AGRA is an African-based institution with the goal of improving smallholder farmers in Africa and looking at accelerating food systems within Africa. We cut across seed systems, which I'm going to talk about today, going down to the market, going down to policy, and how we work with different partners. That's from research to the market and private sector. Thank you.
And Trey.
Thanks, Julie. Trey Key with Gates Ag One. We're a nonprofit subsidiary of the Gates Foundation. We do translational research, trying to bridge the gap between early academic discoveries and development of actual products that have benefit for smallholders, both in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. We're based in St. Louis, Missouri, and it's a real pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you. And we have one more panelist. Do we have Leah on? Hello, Leah. Can you tell us who you are?
Hello. I'm the only farmer in the panel.
Round of applause. That's why we're all here.
And it's a good evening here in Manila, where I'm currently staying. But I go all the way from Bukidnon, the food basket of the South. I lead a farmer group. It's called the Bukidnon PhilGAP Farmers Association. We are a group of GAP, Good Agricultural Practices certified farmers. And I'm also a goat racer, so not totally related to seed production, but a user of seeds for forage. I plant vegetables. I work with farmers, and I also use and advocate the use of certified seeds.
Well, thank you. And because you're a farmer and you're the reason why we're here, we're going to start with you. So can you tell us the importance of an inclusive seed system and then how it particularly, in your mind, differs in your region?
In the Philippines, my view is in particular the view from farmers in Bukidnon. You see here in our country, it's the market that dictates the kind of seeds or the kind of crops that we grow. So there are certain seeds that farmers do not use because the crops are not bought by the market. But in the case of rice, it's usually the farmer who dictates which seeds that they're going to sow in their respective farms. So if you are let us say, a farmer who is also a learning site operator like me, we tend to test new varieties to show to other farmers that you can grow seeds that are, you can grow crops that are not necessarily dictated by the market. And then you can choose the price for which you sell the goods. So that is the current situation here in our country. Recently, the government, because of the high price of seeds, quality seeds that is, the government is trying to encourage research stations to produce their own seeds so that we will not be relying on commercial seeds. But I'm quite skeptical on that because prior to my being a full-time farmer, I used to buy seeds from the Institute of Plant Breeding in UPLB. And I planted it and tried to sell it in the market, but nobody bought the crops that I have grown. So again, I had to go through reasoning to different, trying to understand why our systems work that way. So after a long, let us say, a lengthy process of going through the system, I finally realized that although seeds are available, basically it's still the market that dictates which seeds to grow. That is the case for our country.
Well, thank you. And I do want to add, Leah, we all thought you were going to be here, including yourself, and there were some visa issues, so we're glad she's still here with us, so thank you so much. I know you all worked very hard.
I wouldn't miss this for the world.
Thank you. So, Micah, I'm going to turn to you because East West has been so successful in what you've done with vegetables in Asia and then into Africa. So if you look at your best lessons and where you can move from Asia as you're entering Africa, what are those? And what's the difference and what makes each system work differently and also together?
Good question, and I think it relates to what Leah has just been telling us. We started over 40 years ago in Asia, in the Philippines, exactly, where we started developing the first hybrid vegetables for that market, because basically the available seeds at that time were of low quality or they were developed for other climatic systems, basically. We first launched a hybrid bitter gourd, which is a typical local crop. Although it was of high quality, we soon learned that it's important to give farmers a bit more than just the quality seeds. So in order to make farmers adopt quality seeds, we learned we have to give them the training to basically maximize the potential of those seeds. So learn with basic agronomic techniques, work with them on integrated pest management, and do all that. Another thing that we found was very important is also, again, just pushing seeds into the market is not enough. It's about the market demand, as Leah also emphasized. So that's also what we soon started to work on. We are doing these things now also in our Knowledge Transfer Foundation, where we, for example, in Cambodia, work with chili farmers. We combine them in groups, and then together they can supply to processors who produce chili oil or chili marmalades. So that's also, we found that's a very important factor to be successful with quality seeds in the market. And I think another very important aspect that we learned and that we're also now applying in our work in Africa is that it's important to have a very diverse portfolio. We have always had a portfolio with not only hybrid seeds, but we also have open pollinated seeds in specific crops that demand for that. So like yard-long bean, which is a key crop for us, but also leafies like kangkong or pak chai. We also develop opportunity crops like gaboma or African eggplant because we see that the farmers have a strong demand for that, and it helps to have a broad portfolio in order to give them the opportunities that they need. We see that in Asia, the market has really shifted from that point over 40 years ago, where farmers were basically shifting from often farm-safe seeds to quality seeds. We can now say that most vegetable farmers in Asia are working with hybrid seeds. That's their preferred choice, basically because it brings them the best profit and it's worth the investment. Africa definitely has a way to go. So again, we are trying to work in the same way, making a whole system around bringing that seed availability and seed access to smallholder farms in Africa.
Well, I think we know who's next. Perfect person to answer Africa, and that would be Evelyn.
Yeah.
So, Evelyn, how do you see the seed sector developing in Africa? The inclusivity, what are the interventions you're making, and then how can we all help you?
Okay. Thank you. Seed systems in Africa has not really matured to the level that we want to. There's quite a lot that has been done in Africa to build the seed systems. Give an example of AGRA. We have been in existence for 20 years. We're actually celebrating our 20 years this year. And it started with the seed, creating transformation within the seed systems in Africa. We looked at the policy environment, the governments, the private sector, public sector. So many gaps exist that have provided a challenge for farmers to be able to access good quality seeds. And when we look at Africa, 70 to 80% of the seeds that are used by the farmers are farmer-managed seeds. And this means that any other technologies or any other innovations within the seed systems are really finding challenges of getting into the African market. Not saying that the farmer-managed seed systems is a problem, but we also need to see how we can support the farmers who are exchanging seeds, who are building community seed networks, to be able to not only focus on the farmer-managed system, but transform themselves. We have seen a lot of investment in Africa on the upstream, in terms of breeding, in terms of development of new varieties. For example, speaking for AGRA, we have supported development of over 640 varieties. However, most of these varieties are still in the shelves. They have not been able to come down and reach the farmers. So how do we support the farmers to get these, to have access to these varieties? It comes down to three things. One, the right policy and regulatory environment. We have, as AGRA, we supported the countries to do what we call the seed system and assessment, and we were able to come up with the gaps within different countries that that result in seed systems, challenges in development of seed systems in the countries. And from these seed system and assessments, we were able to develop seed investment plans for the countries, which we've given to the governments. But how many of these governments have been able to take up the seed investments plans to accelerate the growth of the seed sector in the countries? Very few. Secondly, we are looking at the private sector, which is why we are here. But the private sector in Africa is also facing quite a number of challenges. Local seed production is a big challenge. There's issues around access to finance. There's issues around access to a defined market. And this also gives us a big problem within seed access. Finally, I want to talk about the farmer adoption practices. Farmers adopting the new varieties, new systems is also a big challenge because these have not been, the farmers themselves have not been sensitized or do not have this awareness around the seed systems. But just to conclude, all is not lost. Quite a lot is advancing within the seed space in Africa, and that's why we are seeing many investors coming. Actually, Africa is one of the regions that agriculture is really growing, and it cannot grow without the seed. And we always say in AGRA, it all starts with the seeds, and that's where we are focusing. Thank you.
I'm coming to you, Trey, because I feel this is the perfect point. I had spoken with one of your programs that you work with in Denmark, and they were talking about the important role you play where they do the development, they do the science, and then you take it and make sure it doesn't sit on the shelf. The seed system, the quality seeds get out to the farmers. So can you kind of talk about that? And then because it's possibly a more innovative type of seed system, or genetically, how do you gain the assurance and how do you get to the point where you can get the farmers to understand their quality seeds as well as some of the private sector, or in areas where you don't have the private sector? How does this all work? I just loaded you with a lot of questions.
Wow. Let me take a step back and suggest that when you think about a farmer's decision on which seed to use and how to obtain it, how to gain access, probably in my mind the most important factor is trust. We always look at seed or the promotion and sale of seed as a relationship business. It's really a trust business. And so is the farmer gaining that trust because of someone that they have a long history of working with and have had great results? That's certainly one way. Another way is there's a new offer, and they have some assurance of quality that may come from a formal certification system, because they may not know the new person or the new company or the new distributor that they're sourcing from. So we're thinking about those kind of issues as the end game, and trying to design products and as we develop products, have tools when we ask for multiplication so that there's a profit opportunity for the multiplier or the seed company that's in the middle. So we're very careful that we're not receiving income from work in smallholder, low, middle income countries. But we understand that for the system to be there, it'll need to be sustainable and viable. And I think there's often a fear when I've spoken with growers in countries that are making a change, where maybe some of AGRA's work or other work has brought in new legislation, new systems. There's always a perspective of the local companies that have been selling seed that this is a burden or a cost. And I think we have to do a better job of being clear that it's a partnership and an opportunity. It's a way to introduce yourself to someone that you don't know with immediate validation and support. And for most of us, but I don't farm anymore, Julie, but I grew up on a farm, and knowing that you're meeting certain quality standards that someone's watching, you tend to take more care to what you're doing. and then you're in a better position to know that you're going to provide a product that delights your customers. So I think that focus on quality and building those trusting relationships is very important. The last thing I'll say is that when you are exposed to a consumer goods market, you think that people make decisions and make changes very fast. People may get a new phone every year, every 6 months. I don't know. People will adopt some things very quickly. With seed, because of the importance of the decision to the farmer's livelihood, if you make the wrong choice, by the time you realize you've made the wrong choice, you've lost the whole season. In some climates, a whole year, right? And you only have so many seasons in your lifetime that you're working. So most farmers like to experiment for 2 or 3 years. I don't know, Leah may have a different experience, but I think you want to see a good story and the results on paper, see it in your field in a small scale, see it again, and then maybe you'll make a change in terms of what your primary choices are.
And I completely agree with you. If my grandfather was here, he'd tell you the reason why his wheat varieties took off is because farmers would grow some sample plots, other farmers would come see, confirm, and it multiplied. So, Aman, I'm going to come to you. With your work in the seed sector, where do you see making the entire system inclusive, whether it's with smaller holder farmers or larger in areas where the World Bank works?
Thank you. In terms of seed system inclusiveness and making it work for different segments of farming system, one thing that I learned over years of working with farmers is that seed system is diverse, complex, but the most important component of our work. So with that in mind, I mean, what we say now may not be relevant to some parts of the country, some of seed value chain, some of varieties, but let me give you some general topics around, what we think should be done. At the country level, some of the policy and regulatory regimes are outdated plus infrastructures. They're not responsive to today's market, today's farming system, and today's increasing demand for food and consumer preferences. So one of the areas to focus is, like as an entry, to look at the country level policies and regulatory regime infrastructures to make sure that we have a right balance of division of labor between different actors, whether it is public sector, whether it is private sector, whether it is farmers and formal system, because each one of them are equally important in the seed system, right? So that should be very clear in the first place in the policy and regulation and the system of the country, because in some countries, based on our work, we see the policy and regulatory regime very restrictive, preventing others to come and invest in the seed sector, given that this very sensitive area, and of course it is. Or in some areas, there is very limited intervention from the public sector, where you see a lot of poor varieties and cultivars or introduced to the country, which lead to pest and diseases. Also, at the end of the day, does not give the farmers, the return they deserve. The other part of the seed system is that the world is very, very changing. So it's not about consumer preference, as Leah mentioned. It's a very important point what market wants, but also what could be grown in this era where we have a lot of shocks. We have very much erratic precipitation pattern in most parts of the world. We have shocks, we have floods, droughts. So the variety that were released some years ago may not work today, right? So what is our heat, drought, tolerant varieties? And that's, I think, very, very critical point to combine it with consumer preferences, because at the end, if farmers produce and it's not marketed, then that's a big issue. And that's, I think, a very big disconnect between research and extension, or technology development and dissemination and adoption. Countries increasingly realize this, and with some projects that we have around the globe, we are trying to bridge the gaps to the extent possible. In terms of a role of different segments of society, so one of the key issues we have today is unemployment. In the next 10 years, we will have over 1 billion youth entering the job market. And agriculture is increasingly a very less attractive sector for youth. So someone educated, they leave agriculture sector, go somewhere else. And I think seed sector is one of the area where they can bring knowledge, they can bring technology. When they go to agriculture schools, they can come back with their skills and invest. So in most of our client country, I think that's the direction we try to find niche for engaging youth, and of course women and marginalized group, to make the system inclusive. And then, of course, the part around financing is critical. And what I would like to add to what's already said is that, when we develop as a private sector or public sector seed, we need to really make sure that, we keep in our mind the affordability. A technology could be super, but in so many countries, the farmers cannot afford. Do we provide them financial incentive, or do we make the seed very affordable? So, like if you see the examples, like it's kind of an area for thinking that where the upfront cost is low, you see a higher level of adoption, and where we have a high upfront cost, unless it's backed by some level of policy support, that's I think not really flying. And so many varieties released in countries, they are not really finding their ways to farm and to consumers. And finally, what we think also is that some of unhealthy policy support from the public sector side. So you have in some countries significantly unhealthy subsidies that first does not help the sector and the farmers, but also crowd out private sector investment. So one of our analysis showed that for each dollar, to deliver 35 cents in aid to farmers, $1 is spent. You see that, the inefficiency. So how we can make those policy support efficient, I think it will make a big difference in helping farmers, getting the right varieties, the right seeds. And of course, as we speak today, 2.6 billion people are food insecure. And the number is increasing because of these increasing shocks and multi-layer crisis that we are facing. And this population is growing. So then if we are not acting, I think that's a very alarming number that, 2.6 billion people today cannot afford a healthy diet, right? Thank you.
Well, thank you. Okay, Leah, I'm coming back to you because you're our expert, and I don't think we get to hear enough farmer voices. So from our panel, what are the two most important things they hit on that you as a farmer would like to see enacted?
Okay. I'd like to pick up on somebody mentioned that the seed cost has to be reduced so that farmers are going to use them in their farms. But for a farmer with a market, I think we bank on reliable seeds that has a good performance record on a local scale. For example, we do not trust rice seeds grown and tested in Luzon, but untested in Mindanao. We have to see its performance at a local level. Okay? And second, farmers appreciate the kind of support that seed companies give. Like for instance, here's a new variety. And we want to use it, but we're afraid to use it in our farms because it was not tested yet. And so once we plant it, we need support as to pest management and other things that are required when you grow something new in your farm. So that's why we appreciate the kind of support that, example, East-West Seed gives to farmers here in the Philippines, because not only do they allow farms to have demo areas of different seed varieties, and so when farmers come, they take a look, they realize the productivity level of such seeds or crops, and they get to choose, no? And then there's also the support in terms of how to grow the plants. So farmers appreciate that very much. And the last is market linkages. Even if the seed is very expensive, for as long as it is bankable and easily sold, the crop is easily sold in the market, then farmers will still buy that seed, no, seed supply, and use it in the farms.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to do a little something different. And Micah, you know I will. Does anyone have any questions at this point before I kind of shift to a different topic that you would like to ask? Do we have any brave people? I can call on you. Lloyd's looking at me. Okay, I'm going to switch to another topic that's really relevant and for what everyone is working on, especially with seeds and getting them to the farmers. Right now, we have multiple issues going on in the world, whether it's fertilizer or famine, South Sudan, climate change, conflict, all of these things. How are we finally in agriculture going to create, we can call it an anti-fragile, a pre-conflict, pre-catastrophe, we could name it anything we wanted, but when are we going to get to the point where we don't have these shocks, and what is it going to take, in your opinion, to make sure our farmers have seeds and they can stay resilient and come out of these shocks? Would you like to?
Start with me. Thank you. I think your questions have two dimensions. One is that, some factors that are out of our control, right? So very political driven decisions. We hope that, they will be made in the betterment of societies, and especially the people, as I mentioned, that cannot afford healthy diet. Whatever happens at the global level, I think it has an impact. And first hit is the people in developing countries. So that's, I think, one part, and we hope that, that of course has a lot of implication. For example, today we are facing fertilizer crisis, and the fertilizer price went up, on average 20 to 30% in each country you are speaking, unless you're a big producer of fertilizer, right? So then, if you translate this into impact on smallholders, it's significant, right? That's one part of things, and I think the most important thing that what we learn from these lessons, and I think we started at some point with comparative advantage idea of economy to let a country produce one thing, another country other thing. But then now we are coming to a point to realize that there are a lot of things that could be making some countries or number of countries vulnerable to these shocks. So then why not help countries to focus on somehow areas where they have comparative advantage and could be self-sufficient, right? Especially on food security, because as I mentioned, some of those countries, they cannot really withstand those types of unmanageable crisis, right? So coming back and translating this to agriculture and food, we in the World Bank Group, we have this public sector and private sector arms, and one of our organization works with big companies to bring large and transformative investment to different countries, de-risk. But the other part is which has to do with the public sector, and then on public goods, we are trying our best to make sure that we are minimizing the impact of those events on food system and food production. So an intervention that we are really focusing is to make sure that we work with client countries to ensure that that trade barriers are minimized to the extent possible, right? So we have good engagement with client countries, like if a country stop exporting rice, right? So it will have impact on other countries. So then how we can really work and negotiate with those countries that those trade barriers, in terms of managing the fertilizer, introducing farmers with good practices, then providing some level of support. We don't have unlimited budget, but to the extent we repurpose our support to address those emergencies. But of course, in terms of access to seed and access to financing, we try to de-risk investment for private sector, whether it is through public resources or through private arm of the World Bank Group, to bring those investments to the country so the countries can produce. For example, if fertilizer is produced in a country, why not, right? So and then for private sector to be at the level where you can get positive cash flow, maybe it takes 4 years, 5 years, right? So then we can, share some costs and bring some arrangements to make sure that private sector has incentive to be in those countries. Also on the demand side, right? So if farmers do not have access to finance to bring those technologies, we work on credit guarantees with commercial banks, because agriculture sector is a very risky sector, not attractive for so many commercial banks in so many countries. So unless you kind of provide some level of assurance that in event of any emergencies or maybe situation that are preventing farmers from repaying, they will have some coverage. They will not work with farmers. So in so many countries, we have those restructuring facility credit lines, credit guarantee programs, but also in some to support some vulnerable farmers, we work with governments to bring efficiency to their distribution system. For instance, the governance of subsidy. It has a lot of governance issue, right? So we try to introduce some digital means to improve transparency, improve targeting, and make sure the right people are getting the right support. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Micah, I know East West has had 45 years of experience. How do you ensure your farmers have the right seeds, whether it's climate or any other issue? And how do you make sure they're resilient? And it's really more about having the local availability of seeds.
Yes, there's many answers possible, obviously, and it's crucial. It's crucial to farmers who we work for, and of course also to our business. We see a lot of factors hitting smallholder farmers hard, and that has an immediate effect on basically the financial health of the company too. We do different things. For example, to build on farmers' resilience, as I said, we work in training, knowledge transfer, where we've trained now over 1 million farmers directly in agronomic training, market connect, awareness of prices, integrated pest management. We also try to connect them to other actors. We see that it's important to bring actors together. So, for example, we set up recently a project in northern Uganda together with the local bank and with support from the Austrian government, where we agreed that if farmers would do a training and then have a test, and they would get a certificate, and with that certificate they would get a loan. And it would give the bank some confidence that these were qualified farmers who were able to basically have a yield and then pay back that loan. And we trained about 5,000 farmers. Half of them succeeded for the test. About 1,000 opened a bank account, which in itself is often an achievement in rural areas. And a few hundred got a loan. And then later the bank reported back that 99% of those farmers getting a loan paid back, whereas usually that's 50%. So it's a very tangible result of investing into farmer training. Another thing, because we're talking about fertilizer prices, what's happening in Strait of Hormuz is really hitting our farmers, because not only is petrol expensive, so getting seeds to farmers is hard. For farmers to get the seeds into the markets is hard, but the prices of fertilizers, of inputs in general, have gone up with about 50 to 60%. So that means that the net profit could be zero after they've had to invest so much. So we're looking at alternatives, and with the knowledge that we got in our separate foundation, we are now rolling out programs also to our commercial farmers, basically the farmers who buy our seeds, in giving them alternatives like working with green manure. We've been testing that before as an alternative for chemical fertilizers. We are launching seeds with a bio-alternative coating, which is also an alternative for using chemical fertilizers. We're setting up extra trainings, we're setting up farmer field schools. We're trying to do all these things to help them in their resilience to cope with basically the very turbulent dynamics in this current world.
Evelyn, would you like to give any examples, concentrate on one country where you're working, where resilience is important to your mission?
Yeah, maybe just to answer your question, these realities, there was the issues around fertilizer, the increase of prices. All these are realities. I don't see them changing, and it is the world that needs to change, because this is the world we are living in, and the issue around the shocks that we are facing within the world in terms of the input sector, and I'll speak for Africa. We are seeing, as she said, increased prices in all the inputs. All these are being loaded onto the farmer, who has very little capacity in terms of how they're going to afford this. And so it is, for me, looking at Africa, we and maybe the world over, because it's a reality, we need to make a shift. And one of the things is that the role of the private sector becomes very, very key. Our continent is a donor darling. Everybody wants to come and give us money. However, this has changed. USAID went, and we are seeing the pool of funding just shrinking. Building agriculture resilience in Africa can no longer be a donor-funded kind of system. So what needs to happen is that the role of the private sector needs to be strengthened within the region. Without the private sector, then we are going to face these realities and they will not go away. The second issue, and I've seen that is coming up in many African countries, is that food security is now being considered a national security issue. And when it's being considered a national security issue, then governments have to commit to the security, and that is food security. And all the governments in Africa signed an agreement under the CAADP strategy that they'll need to commit 10% of their GDP, I'm not so sure, but a certain percent of their GDP to agriculture. We have seen very little progress on that. This is going until 2030. Very little governments have committed that percentage of the GDP to Africa. Without this commitment, and with food security becoming a national security issue, then this can be able to make the shift, and we can shift the needle towards food resilience in Africa.
Thank you. So Trey, I know it's important for Gates Ag 1 to work with the private sector to create resilience. So would you like to kind of describe some of your best projects or where you see that needing to grow?
I'll do two things, and I've got a new one on my to-do list after hearing the East-West example on the financing side, because regardless of the technology, there's many technologies that have been available for quite some time in the market, and you wonder why a grower doesn't use them, even though the return on investment is quite attractive and the risk sharing is quite fair. And the answer is lack of access to credit or cash at the right time. So very, very impressed with the initiative you described, Marika. In terms of a particular project, the fertilizer case in the long term hits very close to one of our projects. So Professor Ratatouille was on this very stage yesterday and describing a project that she leads, which is around re-engineering enhanced nutrient symbiosis across cereal crops and improving it within legumes. So how do you take advantage from a fertility standpoint of plant microbe interactions to capture the necessary nitrogen and other nutrients and have less requirement for outside input? We're very excited about that project, but we also have to be realistic that it's not going to solve a problem tomorrow. This is a long-term commitment from our side. It'll be a long-term partnership with industry partners. And an interesting thing about it is that I fully expect that the benefits, if we're successful, will also be deployed in commercial markets and things that are quite important to the commercial expectations of seed companies that are here in this meeting. You know, I think finding a way to align those incentives where we can work together, where we can take advantage of the expertise, capability, and financing that a commercial entity can provide, because we have a shared incentive and aligned incentive, and then we can find a way to also accelerate the availability for smallholders. I think that's hopefully a virtuous cycle. They say you can't do faster, better, and cheaper, but we're gonna try.
Well, thank you for always staying committed. One of my things that I'd love to talk about in agriculture is communications. If you ever need a cheerleader, if you ever need someone to sit next to a person on an airplane and educate them, that is me. And you really, yes. Actually, I will tell you, somebody who read Wheat Belly the other day was telling me that he had looked into the story and that there was some evil man long ago who made wheat short. And I happened to look at him and I said, I think that was my grandfather. So perfect reason to talk about communications. So I'm going to come to our farmer last, because you are going to listen to all that we have to say and then tell us what you truly need, because that's what matters. So we know there's a lack of trust that the farmers, of course, have. Do the seeds work? How is this going to work on my farm? And then the return on investment. We know that there is the need for the extension, for the trust building, the education. How do they do this? We've heard there's a lack of ability to invest. Hard to get the private sector involved, and where the government sometimes falls off. So in your ability to communicate to the lay people, and I know we're all not the lay people, but we have to remember we depend on them. They vote for policies. They promote them. They seem to be louder than we are on social media. What is the best way you feel we can get our message out that seed inclusivity is important, agriculture is important, and this is why? I'll let anyone go first who would like to go. Oh, I knew, Micah, that's your job.
I guess the answer is there, right? It's
she's
farmers
gonna come.
like Leah telling.
Well, Leah is going to grade all of our responses and tell us if we're doing enough. So would you like to start?
I think it is crucial that we have farmers like Leah and others giving their testimonials on what is important to them. And I think for farmers it is important to have a choice. And we will not force commercial seeds towards farmers. We shouldn't ban informal seeds. There should be availability of both. And I think that should be the key message. It is not a matter of if this or that. It should be all available. And that's the key message to communicate.
Evelyn?
I think as scientists, where we fall short is how we communicate science to the public. And we really think that everybody is a scientist like us and they will understand the science that we are trying to communicate. And that's why the activists, people in the activism space are able to beat us in science because they know how to beat the public, to capture their communication to the public. They sensationalize their communication. They make it very attractive to them. For us, when we're looking at inclusive systems, there's quite a lot that is happening in the activism space around the inclusive systems. We need to tell the public that we are here for the farmers and we are here to give the farmer the choice that he wants. We are giving the farmer all the options they need and let the farmer make the decision on what works for them and what based on the realities that they face on the ground. So for us, it's a matter of saying that we understand the farmers' needs, but we are here to give different options, certified seed, farmer managed seed systems. We are here to support you. We are here to support the whole spectrum.
Trey.
Thank you.
I think the area we can improve the most is listening.
Well,
Sorry.
she's already judged us, and so
Honestly, I think we need to understand what our concerns, whether it's a societal concern, whether it's a farmer's concern or a regulator's concern, and not just try and answer, but listen to understand, and not just to react. So I think that's a big opportunity for us as a sector. We spend a lot of money. We have talented spokespeople. In some cases, we even have very trusted spokespeople that can deliver the right message. But often we're not hearing the real question.
Amon.
Yes, I think everything is said. While we really need to put farmers at the center of our efforts, right? The farmers are the user and the buyer of seed, right? So they buy seed, they use seed, and then they supply it to the world, right? So 500 million or more than that farmers produce the food we eat, smallholders. So my feeling is that in most of country, I'm representing some of the developing countries that I'm working, right? So the point I wanted to make is that research and development in agriculture sector is significantly underfinanced in those countries. So if you compare the developed countries and the developing countries, we'll see a very significant variation in how the agriculture sector is treated. And I give you an example. To release a variety, it may take 10 years. And then if it goes to poor farmers, who pays for it? The government should pay for it, right? And then for a government, if you talk of 10 years, in fact, because of this political transition, nobody really buys it. So the thing is that we make this agriculture sector, agriculture research, especially for the crops that are related to food security. The other part is taken care of by good private sector. If you have cash crop is very much well covered. Yeah, because you produce, someone buys it. But the crops that are targeting smallholders and they are staple crops for families, they are very much underfinanced. And the research and development is very much donor-driven, as it was mentioned. How we bring the governments to take ownership, right? So we should, as a donor community, also make sure that the government is taking responsibility for these aspects of the work. And then back, in the value chain, there is a role for farmers. So a company producing seed, how they can create jobs, create value for farmers, they are the end user. I think that's very, very important.
Thank you. One thing, and Leah, tell me if this is a good idea. I would like to get scientists asking, or I'd like to have the farmers ask the scientists why they're doing certain research that maybe is not needed by a farmer. So I would love for someone to set up a panel and have a bunch of scientists up here and the farmers going, we're never going to use that. Please stop funding that. It's never going to be used. And I also, before we come to you, I want to thank the ISF for having farmers. How many times do we go, we're talking about farmers, and there's no farmers anywhere in the room? So she really was supposed to be here with us, but you know what? This is all yours. So tell us what we got right, wrong, and where we can get better.
I like it because I hear about the efforts of the people there on the stage. Okay, so it's my first time to listen to them, and here I was thinking, when I was invited there, I was thinking, what kind of knowledge would they or require from me? Me, a farmer, but I'm happy that you invited me, although I was kind of lost as to what information to relate to you. So these are my reflections, and these were born out of my experience and what I heard from you. First, we need to empower. You said we need to empower farmers. We need to put them in a position where they are able to use based on the correct science. So this helps them decide whether to use a particular seed variety. Second, we need market linkages. A farmer would grow anything for as long as there's a market. And this is where the government, here in the Philippines, this is actually where the government can come in, no? Because there are programs here like feeding programs, there are government institutions that require crops or produce, and yet farmers are not directly linked to these institutional markets. Farmers do not know that this kind of markets exist. The only market that they know of is the market that requires middlemen. So we're talking about rising cost of fertilizer. So government should not be importing crops like rice for the Philippines or carrots. That's the latest issue. But we should be encouraging farmers or supporting farmers in growing these crops. No more imports, because that adds to the burden of the farmers as to how to sell their goods. Okay? What else did I write here? So I already mentioned, reliable seeds. We always start with reliable seeds because every seed counts. Like when we do our cost analysis, we realize that every grain of corn seed is already priced in our country at 1 peso. So even if the seed is expensive, for as long as it is reliable, it is of high quality, we would gamble on that. No, we would not, for me or for my group of farmers, we would not plant seeds that are of low quality, even if they are low cost. No? And this is exactly what is happening in our country. The winner of the bid to supply vegetables, usually they are used in the backyard production only. But for commercial production, we always use the more reliable seeds, even if they are more expensive. Well, the challenge is like, for instance, now we are required to do onion production, to test it here in Mindanao, but we don't have seeds in Mindanao. So that's the challenge for the seed companies, no, to come up with the seeds so that we can plant on the right time. What else did I write here?
Okay, we're going to get the onion seeds for you. It's done. Onion seeds are done. We think we can do that.
And lastly, I think we should train farmers like me. No, now, we had this latest activity within our group wherein we were led to banks. We were introduced to banks and lending institutions so that we can get on with our project because we don't have capital. But then it takes years for banks to release, and we have volumes of, we'd like to grow crops, not attend to writing down project proposals or meeting the paper requirements of banks. We don't want to do that. We want to grow crops. That is our main preoccupation. So what our group did is to raise the funds ourselves, not rely on the government or funding institutions. That's the role of the association now, to raise funds so that we can use these funds, buy seeds for our farmers or make market connections so that we will be independent. No, we do not wait for funding, which takes such a long time, and then only to be told, you do not qualify because like that. So we have to teach farmers that they have to set aside money for themselves, teach them how to be independent, aside from connecting to farmer to markets, or what was that again? I forgot my old age. Teaching them the science of growing things.
I think you're going to be on going on a road show pretty soon with a lot of us. I'm sorry, I did not take questions because we never get to hear farmers speak, and that's where my heart is. And my grandfather always said, you take it to the
Come
farmer.
to the Philippines.
We will all, but we're getting onion seeds. So I just want to thank everyone who is here today. I especially want to thank our farmer. You lit up the room. There were more people taking pictures of you than us. And that's fine. We don't want us. We want it all about you. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, my wonderful panel. And we'll get those seeds.
Thank you.
Thank you.